to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yeah, wait.
Tom
No,
Bel-
Pete called.
He just-
Oh, did he? Oh, sorry.
Tom Belter,
Here.
Jack Birmingham, Steve Hintz,
Here.
Jason Lasky,
Here.
Laura Mary, Sue Ponick,
Here.
Archie Stam.
Here we have a consent agenda. Need a motion? Are there any changes?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Oh, same sign, passes. New business. 20-01 approves zone changes from urban mixed-use district UMU to urban mixed-use district with a planned development overlay, 700 block of South Main Street. I need a motion?
One. Motion? So moved.
And a second?
So what's actually happening here?
Thank you for the
We need a
question.
second
We need a
first.
second.
I need a second.
Oh, second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, discussion?
Holding it.
We're putting a planned development overlay on that district so that when that proposal comes back from Mr. Dumke and his team regarding his project, that the zoning is correct for his project.
Okay.
So it's to help achieve the RDA's ends in that redevelopment.
How many people approve that plan submission when he brings that?
It has to go to RDA, Plan Commission, and Council.
In council, okay, that's what I thought.
So we'll see it before it's approved?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I'm sure it will be part of a development agreement that will be written in together. And if you were not watching the council workshop last night, and that's why it's not in here, Mr. Hess, who's on Mr. Dumke's team, presented the project to council for possible TIF financing for the project as a pay-go. So that would be another thing potentially the RDA would get involved with. So there's a lot of things that have to happen in addition to the LIHTC award that won't happen until April. So this is kind of we're getting ready for a project, but he still has to get the tax credit award for this project to go through.
And if he were not to get the tax credit, then what happens?
Mr. Hess said that he'd probably try another year.
Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Lasky,
Aye.
Ponick,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Belter.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
Okay, 20-02, approve continuing urban green space use, northeast corner of Central Street and West Parkway Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
Comments?
So we're just basically approving this year by year still?
Yes,
Right, yeah.
just to make sure that everything stays copacetic and everybody's satisfied with maintenance and project.
There was a lot of documentation in our minutes in our attachments about this, and I kept looking, why is there so much just about this little parcel? Well, then I looked back, it was 2014, 2015.
Yep, and it's the first time the RDA ever did anything like this, so we wanted to make sure we're dotting our i's and crossing our
Okay.
Does anybody want a longer-term approval than annual renewals?
Not that I'm aware
Or
of.
not?
Is there any reason why we wouldn't do a longer term?
If somebody would approach us and say they'd like to build a house on the property,
Right.
I mean, the RDA does hold the property for future redevelopment, and going into this, we thought this would be a very good use for the property, and we don't know how temporary it is, depending on neighborhood association and interest in redevelopment in that neighborhood.
How big of a parcel is it?
Steve?
Do we have any idea if anybody ever uses this parcel for anything?
Yes, I believe the neighborhood uses it quite frequently
Or what?
It's great looking.
for
They've invested some money.
neighborhood activities that they put together. Some neighbors, I believe, use it for children's parties, for get-togethers, these types of things.
Do they charge for use?
No, they cannot.
Very good.
show through well enough on my map.
Yeah, it's a smaller lot. It's
56 by 86?
yeah, it's like 35 by 65. It's just a very small lot on the corner of Parkway and Central.
Is this it right here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes. And this site they also use as a community garden type area where they let the kids come in and learn how to plant seeds, and as a educational area as well.
Who put the walkway in and all of that?
The city did.
Okay.
Our first, I think, projects, was that?
Yes, yes, yes. If the RDA were to consider looking at doing this for more than a year, because it was a conditional use permit and plan development approved by Plan Commission and Council, with the condition that it be approved by the RDA on a yearly basis, it would have to go back to Plan Commission and Council to make an amendment to the original.
That answers my question, thank you.
Okay.
Is there a process for something like this to become permanent? That process?
Yeah,
We don't have a process
No.
for that.
Yeah.
My guess is that maybe some of the discussion item that Ms. Palmieri asked us to put on the agenda might relate to that.
And is a neighborhood association of the type that can charge the people living within the association or the members for maintenance and upkeep of general areas within the neighborhood?
The neighborhood association in Middle Village is not the typical subdivision neighborhood association.
get-
Where they
yep.
can assess,
So they don't have the ability to do that?
they cannot.
No.
Okay. And the only reason I was asking that is because if it were to go to permanent, then it would be an asset in the neighborhood, and you would want to maybe see if it could go to the tax roll. So, okay.
Other questions? Can we call the roll, please?
Lasky.
Aye.
Sonic.
Aye.
Pitts.
Aye.
Belter.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
Resolution 20-03, approve continuing urban green space use southeast corner of Ida Avenue and Franklin Street. Similar action. Need a motion?
The city also, so moved.
Second?
Motion is second. Comments?
Did the city also put in the walkway here?
Yes.
Okay. And is this typical when we do these things?
Typical, these are the only projects we've done like this. We got a grant to acquire and demolish blighted properties there, and that's how the RDA ended up with the property. And what I recall, when we were working on a Middle Village neighborhood plan, the idea of the space came along, and neighborhood association, development department put together a project like this
That's
and
really nice.
brought it forward.
But it's maintained by the community, correct? By the
Neighborhood
association?
association.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Let's call the roll, please.
Lasky.
Aye.
Sonic.
Aye.
Pitts.
Aye.
Belter.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
Resolution 20-04, declare and approve disposition of surplus property for future redevelopment authority acquisitions to Habitat for Humanity of Oshkosh Restore. Need a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Second?
Motion is second. Discussion. Alan, explain that a bit more.
Yes. Throughout the year, the RDA acquires properties, both residential and commercial. We solicited proposals from people who would want to do salvage as a nonprofit, and Habitat gave us a proposal many years ago. It saves the RDA and the city money because they'll come in and reduce our tonnage that we have to ship to the landfill. It helps Habitat with Habitat gain some inventory for their restore, which of course helps with their programs within the city of Oshkosh. So it seems to work out quite nicely, and Ms. Brandt coordinates that with Habitat, and thank you for coordinating all that, because it's not easy when we're going through an RDA acquisition. There's asbestos and other hazardous materials we have to coordinate with, and this is just a an added benefit of the program.
And because you have conditions on all of this, the city's not then liable for, because they're holding their own insurance and.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, and all their volunteers are their own.
So this would apply to any property that the city is acquiring and it's being torn down?
RDA is acquiring, yes.
The RDA is acquiring?
So we've used it for residential and commercial. I want to
Right.
say 43 7th, you said they went through and salvaged what they could out of that commercial building.
Right. So this is simply a blanket authorization?
Yes.
Do they have the right to refuse some buildings?
Yes.
We don't force them to take anything that they don't want to sell on their store.
And there's some things by statute that they cannot salvage. And they're aware of what they can and can't do.
And we're sure that there's no asbestos or anything like that before they would start salvaging?
Correct. All the asbestos abatement is completed before I let them in the property.
Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Leskey.
Aye.
Sonic.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Felton.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
Resolution 20-05, approved 2020 pilot housing stock improvement programs, new construction, code compliance, and historic preservation. Need a motion?
So moved?
Second?
And a second. Comments? Want to read through all this?
I don't want to read through all of it. Let's see.
Summary?
The three new programs that were identified was based on council's direction to staff that they want to see more projects done in the city for housing affordability and renovation. We looked at a lot of different communities in Wisconsin and how they've done things. The acquisition, disposition, rehabilitation is modeled on Green Bay, who's been doing that type of program for about 20 years, and they've done more than 100 properties like this in their downtown area. The code compliance would be something new. That's something that's been generated based on input from our building inspection and code enforcement staff, as well as our city attorney staff. So we're hoping to achieve some of those neighborhood revitalization goals with that program. And then last but not least, the historic preservation would actually be a new program for Wisconsin. We haven't found another community in Wisconsin that does that, but it's been a high priority for the city to see the historically contributing parcels or any historic properties rehabbed in a historic way. And this is one way to help people achieve that. So it achieves multiple goals in many of our housing revitalization efforts. And council approved this as part of the budget, and then in December approved the programs, and we're bringing it to RDA because the RDA will play a role in some of these projects. And wanted to make sure you were aware of it and support that, yes.
Are all three programs new?
All three programs are new.
The most amount of money is in the acquisition, demolition, financing
Mhm.
projects. Darlene, I think at the last meeting, we had an issue and a question about a particular property, and I think we decided not to do anything with it, but your comments really suggested that we might have more money and not enough projects there. Are we okay? You're talking about 10 to 12 a year. Is the supply of projects going to be okay?
At this point in time, there'd be many targets for that type of acquisition because we'd be looking at acquiring and removing the most blighted properties and replacing them with potentially a new property on the same block in the same neighborhood. So it's when we look at the scoring that we have on our maps, it would make a big difference on individual parcels. It goes from a negative parcel to one of the best parcels.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a test for this year, to see just how many we can do with this, and
Yeah.
we probably are gonna have to pay more than we have in the past to do as many projects at this point.
Yeah.
We've never really exceeded 50 cents on the dollar. We might have to exceed that,
Right.
do this type of
So,
scale of projects.
I mean, basically, we have pretty much operated on a situation of where the owner has come to us and said, you
Correct.
know, I'll sell it to you, and then we don't have relocation costs, things like that. Are you anticipating that we'll be moving into a situation, particularly if you're focusing on particular geographic areas, that we may have to initiate the offer?
That is possible. We're preparing correspondence that we could send out to people,
Uh-huh.
so that they'd know that the city, or the RDA would be interested in acquiring
Interested in
properties.
Doing it, okay, so I mean, it's anticipated as a possibility.
Yes, it would be more proactive than we've been more reactive in the
Right.
past.
Yeah. I'm looking at your neat code up there. I haven't decoded it yet. What's the orange?
Well, this is a scale of the housing.
You can read it, Tom.
Mid-low ranking.
Yep. The red is the blocks that have the worst scores for housing in the
Okay.
city,
Uh-huh.
based on several different measures from the assessor's office and
Okay.
code enforcement and police and fire.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
the
the
red, the
Excuse
red,
me, is it the worst quality of housing?
worst quality
Okay.
housing, yes.
Yeah.
How many of those are associated with the university?
Well, I can tell you, the ones probably closest to the university probably would have that bias, but you could see there's a big cluster in the River East Neighborhood Association,
Yeah.
and, along the railroad tracks, so there's a lot of blocks that we can work on
Yeah.
independent of the university, because that does kind of cloud the issue a little bit. And we have some neighborhood associations that are very anxious to work with us on these types of projects, so we don't have that so much in the university area.
Sure.
And there's neighborhood plans that this would dovetail very nicely for removing blight and putting new housing in.
So this funding is for 1 year now?
Yes.
And what if we don't spend all the money? Does it carry over? Does it,
It would carry over. This is city funds right now. My hope is that we would spend this money and we could ask for another allocation from the city council in next year's budget then, and
Okay.
depending on the reception, scale it up or down.
This gives clear direction to staff to pursue properties that will come to the RDA and their recommendations will be approved.
That's what our hope would be, yes.
But our hope is.
I think Darlene batted about 65% last
I
year.
know, and I felt bad.
Trying to help.
So it's a real, in terms of going forward from here, you have an idea of where the biggest, the rougher areas are. There. But we're still operating with kind of a mixed view of expenditures on places from different sites, with the owner coming to the city versus aiming at a particular district for proactive.
We'll certainly entertain any owner who wants to approach the staff on that.
Uh-huh.
And there'd still be more than just these blocks identified, because we still have some redevelopment plans we want to implement. There's still some corridors that need improvement, so
Yeah.
there's going to be not just the red blocks in front of you is my expectation, but I do expect more of those types of projects coming forward, because
Okay.
now we have more funding to do this.
Thank you.
But you're right, it would be nice to have 2 or 3 targeted blocks, spend all our money in that small section and create some real nice space that needs to be fixed, so.
Yeah, those quick wins would really make,
Well, we get this patchwork quilt approach and that it just doesn't get any,
it's pretty, but
right. Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Lasky.
Aye.
Sonic.
Aye.
Pitts.
Aye.
Belter.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
Discussion, long-term community garden.
At this point in time, I have nothing to add. I think we need to table that until Ms. Palmieri can attend, since she
Okay.
was the one who requested it.
Go to the executive director's report.
Thank you. The couple of things to highlight. Nothing to report on. I'm reporting nothing to report. On the Fox Valley Pro basketball, the city attorney isn't even here to give us any updates because there really have been no updates.
Is there a trigger date coming up? Or-
Let's see, I don't know what the schedule is on bankruptcy, so I have no sense for that. Let's see, probably the highlight I want to point out is the Rock the Block location at Congress Field has been selected, and the dates have been set for May 12th, 14th, and 15th of this spring. We're expecting to use some of the Healthy Neighborhoods funds, and if there are any projects that would dovetail with the new program, we would want to use that in the Congress neighborhood as well. And just to give you an idea, the Sacred Heart Project had about 20 or 25 homes, and they're already up to over 50 homes. So once the Habitat and Greater Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods and the Community Foundation are getting better at getting the program put together and doing canvassing for projects. So this is just the second of several that we're planning on doing over the next several years. Good news to report, 43 7th demolition should be starting. I don't know if
Started.
it did start.
I noticed this morning on the way to work that the back, or the east half, let's say, the east half of the warehouse is gone. So demolition has started.
Let's see, you should have a copy of the sawdust just plan draft.
Got so excited.
I felt it was important enough to actually schedule some of the planners who worked on it for our next RDA meeting, so they can give a presentation on that and walk you through that. There's been a group that have been meeting for probably a year now on this. Mr. Belter and Ms. Palmieri have been representing the RDA and the city on that, so looking forward to putting that on either for a special meeting in February is my expectation. So this is a hard copy, so you can review it at your leisure, and then we'll put it on for a presentation and discussion and recommendation for the RDA. Let's see, other highlights, the Pioneer, that's part of the Sawdust District Master Plan. If you recall, Art Dumke and Mr. Hess made a presentation to council, and they're moving forward with plans on the development of the Pioneer. We're hoping they have something in the very near future so they can break ground this spring, and of course, keep RDA apprised of anything that the RDA might need to be included in. 9th Avenue extension to the CN. We did submit that grant application for running 9th Avenue from Main Street all the way to the east to the railroad tracks and crossing at the existing railroad tracks. And we did include land acquisition remediation in that cost estimate. And then the city's CIP also includes undergrounding and the 9th Avenue extension as favorable economic conditions, which I'm hoping we have, because we're hoping to send out an RFP for the area there north of 9th later this winter, so that we can attract more development to the Sawdust District and the city's redevelopment area, which includes that 9th Avenue corridor. Let's see, Pioneer Drive Riverwalk. If you recall, we were unsuccessful with last year's DNR grant application. I expect we'll be making another one similar, if not bigger, that might include Pioneer Island for this spring's application. And Boatworks is still under contract with Morgan Partners.
How's that bridge over to Pioneer Island? That's part of that Riverwalk plan.
I would say I am doubtful we can reuse that. My expectation is we're gonna have to put in a new ADA compliant and maintenanceable project.
I figured.
Parcels H, I, and J in Marion and Pearl redevelopment area. If you recall, Merge is working on finishing their due diligence and designs, and I just heard from them today, they're still planning on breaking ground May 1st, and we're trying to tie up those loose ends with ATC and the railroad and all the easements that were on that property. And let's see, we're still on track for the multimodal trail connecting Rainbow Memorial Park to the Oshkosh Corp site at Lakeshore Park. And that should be occurring in 2021 for that actual construction.
What does multimodal mean?
Bicycle,
Well, it's,
kayak.
Bicycle, pedestrian.
Yes, bicycle pedestrian.
Segways,
ATV,
segways,
lime scooters,
scooters?
scooters, maybe.
I don't know what the limits are off the top of my
Yeah.
head. I know bike and pedestrian for sure they
Right.
want to.
Good, thank you.
That's all I have to report. And then we'll need a motion to go into closed.
Yep.
That's me.
Okay.
I move that the redevelopment, wait, I have to read this first. The redevelopment authority may convene into closed session related to the negotiation of land for slum and blight elimination at 1628 Liberty Street and 1004 South Main Street, and pursuant of section 19.85, parent 1, parent E, to discuss bargaining options, strategy, and parameters where competitive bargaining reasons require a closed session.
Second?
So moved.
Second.
I think I
Sorry,
moved
thank
it.
you.
Call the roll, please.
Second.
Lasky.
Aye.
Sonic.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Belter.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
Cut the cameras.